Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Testing.
Testing.
Go Mariners.
Testing.
Kyle, how's it going?
Good evening. I want to welcome everybody. It's 6 o'clock p.m. I'm going to call this meeting to order. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. I want to acknowledge that we have people attending both in person and on Zoom. We ask for your cooperation and support as we work together to have a productive in-person board meeting. As of March 12th, facial coverings are optional, so please respect everyone's personal choices. This is the board's business meeting where we are focused on taking action to support our mission to educate, prepare, and inspire every student to graduate and seek their full potential as lifelong learners. This meeting is being streamed live and is being recorded on the school district's YouTube channel. The first item on our agenda is our land acknowledgement. I'd like to introduce Superintendent Sweeting.
Good evening. We honor the first peoples of these lands by acknowledging that the area in which we gather is within the traditional territory of the Stillaguamish tribe of Indians. The Stillaguamish people have inhabited these lands and waters since time immemorial, and their ancestors have remained in this territory to this day. The Stillaguamish people have continued to practice the traditional ways of their ancestors of fishing, hunting, and gathering. The Stillaguamish tribe has had these lands and cultural traditions passed on to them by their ancestors who believe that everything has a spirit and that they are caretakers of these lands and waters.
Thank you. Next, we'll have our Pledge of Allegiance. Would everyone please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. You may be seated. Will the clerk please take attendance?
Director Ray,
Here.
Director Kelly,
Here.
Director Kingman,
Here.
President Levesque,
Here.
Director Knapp,
Here.
Student Advisor Andrich, Student Advisor Schroeder,
Here.
Superintendent Sweeting.
Thank you. We'll acknowledge that Maddie is absent and excused. Next is our approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as proposed?
I move we approve the agenda.
I second.
Clerk, we are ready to take the vote to approve the agenda for tonight's regular meeting.
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Kingman,
Aye.
President Levesque,
Aye.
Director Knapp,
Aye.
Thank you. The agenda is adopted. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the February 28th regular meeting. Are there any changes to the regular meeting minutes of February 28th? Or do we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
A motion to approve the minutes from February 28th meeting.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the regular Zoom meeting minutes of February 28th. Clerk, we're ready to take the vote.
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Kingman,
Aye.
President Levesque,
Aye.
Director Knapp.
Aye.
Thank you. The minutes from February 28th are approved. Next item of business is our presentation, and that's going to be our Education Support Professionals Recognition. I'm going to introduce Superintendent Sweeting, who will make a few comments and then turn the meeting over to Eric.
Good evening again. This is a special week. We want to honor all of our educational support specialists, and in other words, our classified staff, and we have many. And I would like each one of them that are here tonight to come and stand up so we can just recognize you. Just come stand up right along that wall right there. And it'll be great. And while they're doing that, I have a few people that I would like to get ready to read the proclamation. And so in a few moments, we're going to read the governor's proclamation. Okay, I think we're good. Do we have everybody up there? All right, so you're special, and everybody that's on Zoom too that are part of this team, thank you so much. So there's a proclamation by the governor, and we're going to start with Carrie Henderson-Burke.
Thank you, Dr. Sweeting. Whereas education support professionals are involved in nearly every aspect of education, maintaining buildings and grounds, preparing and serving meals, keeping school facilities clean and orderly, assisting in the classroom, providing over 60% of all instructional hours to special education, English language learners, and opportunity gap students, performing and conducting research activities, providing information, technology and media services, administrative support functions, and safe transportation, creating a secure and healthy environment, and many other specialized services. And
whereas more than 62,000 education support professionals work with and help students in Washington's universities, colleges, and public schools are the backbone of our public education system, and deserve recognition and thanks for the outstanding work they do for this state and their communities. And
whereas educational support professionals are instrumental in fulfilling the state's responsibility to educate all students, and by supporting the learning environment, they serve as crucial partners with teachers, parents, administrators, and school boards. And
now, therefore, I, Jay Inslee, Governor of the State of Washington, do hereby proclaim March 14th through 18th, 2022 as Education Support Professionals Week in Washington. And I encourage all people in our state to join me in this special observance.
Thank you very much. All right, so I'm going to share something on my screen here before I introduce Eric. All right. So before I do this, though, I want the group that's here in person, if there's anything you want to share at the very end with us, it'd be great. But you don't have to, but if you'd like to say a few words, you're welcome to do that. So first of all, you are treasured in every way. And so you'll notice a theme out in the buildings during this week from at least the cabinet and the board is that you are treasured. And so this slide that you see has those signs on there, and you'll notice that those signs are going to be in these special treasure packages that are coming to either both the schools and the sites. And inside there's various items that are worthy of taking a snack and a break. So you are treasured, and we appreciate you greatly, and cannot say that with the words that there are. You have helped us to get through this crazy time, and we could not have done without you. And you are treasured in many ways. So thank you. So I'd like to introduce Eric DeYoung, and he's going to share a little bit more of the PowerPoint.
Yes, thank you, Chris. I want to echo that. It's been a long couple of years for sure. I know Nancy and Renee and I have been working closely together for the last couple of years through the pandemic, and making sure that we're able to continue on and function well. So as you can see on the slide up there, 734 staff and 337 are classified staff, which we have a representation here, which is awesome. We'll go and flip through the next one. We have secretarial clerical. See, these are all different classifications. Individual classification, which is a lot of different activities that people are doing in those positions. Our transportation staff, so you can see a bird's eye view there. That must have been done with a drone, huh, Gary? Is that right?
And I want to say disclaimer, we couldn't get everybody's picture or name on this PowerPoint. So the pictures are just a reflection of, there's many of you, the 300 and almost 40.
Yeah, 340 folks. So we've taken a snapshot of a few of them here. Child nutrition staff have been working obviously really, really hard all the way through, delivering meals, and then now back in the buildings, which is great to be back in, and hopefully in actual cafeterias here pretty soon. Ground staff, keeping our buildings looking great outside. I saw somebody outside putting fertilizer down the other day, and actually looked like more fun than I was having, that's for sure. Health room assistants and nurses, the front lines for sure in all of this, and got us through it. Been working really hard, had some really tough challenges coming their way this last year. Our maintenance staff, that's servicing our HVAC systems and any other thing that comes their way. Custodial staff, working hard on the inside of the buildings, keeping everything really clean for us, working, day-to-day spills, and then deeper cleaning too in the summer times and those things. It's a great crew. Our paraeducators have been working throughout the last couple of years in person, online, remote, keeping our students safe, crossing the street, as you can see, at recess, and filling in wherever they are needed. Our technology staff been very important as we've been through remote learning, Chromebooks, and keeping the internet going for us has been a real challenge. So I want to thank you again, all of our support staff. Great job. Let's give them a hand. And Nancy's our PSC president. Did you want to say anything, Nan? No pressure.
Well, any of them can say
Or
something
anybody,
too.
I guess.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Nancy Johnson. I'm the president for the PSC. I just want to say that I'm super proud to represent such a wonderful group of individuals. I truly believe that they're the foundation for the school district. So we all would be lost without them. And I know that I appreciate each and every one of you. So thank you.
Thank you all for everything you do every day for us. Really appreciated.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for all you do for our kids every day. We appreciate you. Next item on our agenda is our public comment portion of our meeting. We have one person signed up. I'm going to read the script. The board recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of involving members of the public in its meetings. The board appreciates feedback in order to make the best decisions possible to benefit students. In order to permit fair and orderly expression of public comment, the board will provide a period of time at the beginning of each regular meeting during which visitors may address the board on any topic within the scope of the board's responsibility. Board Policy 1400 provides guidelines for public comments. Anyone addressing the board tonight, whether it be in person or virtually, has completed a public comment form and read and agreed to the district's instructions for public comment prior to this meeting being called to order. When the board president calls your name, please step up to the microphone if attending the meeting in person. If attending the meeting virtually, please join as a panelist, allow video, and unmute your microphone. Please refrain from comments that are an invasion of privacy, violate school district policy related to harassment, intimidation, bullying, or discrimination, are disruptive, irrelevant, libelous, slanderous, or profane. And please limit your comments to 3 minutes. The board does not respond to questions during the business meeting in order to comply with the state of Washington's Open Public Meetings Act. The board's silence does not signal agreement or endorsement of the speaker's remarks. Depending on the nature of your topic or questions, the superintendent may ask staff to contact you to answer questions or provide information. If you requested a follow-up response on your public comment form, you will typically receive a response within 5 business days, depending on research required. The board president may interrupt or terminate an individual statement if it is uncivil or exceeds the allowed time. Each speaker will be given 1 opportunity to speak. First, we will hear public comments from members of the audience who are here with us in person. Then we will hear from our members of the audience on Zoom. We have 1 person signed up to speak. When I call your name, please approach the microphone and wait until the timer is ready. A bell will ring when your time to speak has ended. Our speaker tonight is Angelo Kuhn. Angela, will you please approach the microphone? Thank you, Angela. You may speak when you're ready.
All right. My name is Angela Kuhn, and I am a parent. I have 4 kids. I have 2 in the district. 2 used to be in the district, and I pulled those 2 for obvious reasons to homeschool, and going to continue that. While the rest of the school returned mask-free today, my heart goes out to the teachers and staff that couldn't go without their mask. They're actively being segregated and discriminated against by the Arlington Public Schools, who in writing told the unvaccinated that they must stay socially distant from others, wear a KN95 mask, and regularly test for COVID to be at school and do their job. Not not to speak from a megaphone here, guys, but have you guys read the Pfizer data that's come out? The 9 pages of adverse reactions, and that's something you want to enforce upon our teachers, our staff, our students. It's awful. Are you really following the science, or are you doubling down on control? Also, those tests you're providing, you and the entire district have had no idea what the ingredient list was on either of those tests until last week when I asked for them. One of the tests, we know we got a response, not from you guys. Yeah, Krista went out and she reached out to the health district, and she reached out to the manufacturer. So I commend her for that. But before that, you guys had no idea what the ingredients were in the tests that you were making your students, the children take. You had no idea what was in the ingredients that you're having to this day your staff take. And the ingredients are awful. They're carcinogens. 2 of the ingredients, polyurethane foam and ethanol, have been up the noses of all of our students repeatedly, thousands of times. You should be ashamed of yourselves. So now the staff members have to go, okay, well, I want my job. So either I wear a KN95 and be segregated at school, or I take a dangerous/unknown test, or I get a dangerous jab that's got 9 pages of known adverse reactions, including death. Shame on you, Arlington Public Schools, and all the other districts falling in line. I used to love our schools, love our schools. I was proud to walk our children to school each day, share smiles with the crossing guards, enjoy volunteering in the classrooms, helped decorate the gym for events, and even helped raise money with the Arlington Education Foundation as a board member for classroom mini grants and scholarships. I trusted you all with my children's lives and education. No more. I can't wait till my son graduates next year and he's out, and I cannot be happier about it. I have a stepdaughter. I don't have much say in where she goes because I'm just the stepmom. Okay, but I'm not going to have my 2 little girls be exposed to segregation, discrimination. I will not send my kids to a school where segregation and discrimination are actively practiced, encouraged, and normalized. You guys say educate, prepare, and inspire. Well, you guys are educating, preparing, and inspiring our kids to segregate and discriminate. You should be ashamed of yourselves.
Thank you for your time, Angela. Do we have any Zoom signups?
Yes, we believe that Joe Angelo is on the line to speak tonight.
Joe, can you hear us? Clerk, I do not see a Joe. Thank you for your patience. We will find out what's going on.
Doesn't look like Mr. Angelo is unmuting, so he must be passing on his speaking tonight.
Okay, thank you. And it looks like we are done with our public comment portion of our meeting. Next item on the agenda is our public hearing for our transportation vehicle capital projects and general fund budget extensions 2021-22. This is our public hearing and comments regarding the transportation vehicle capital projects and general fund budget extensions 21-22. We will now open the public hearing regarding the transportation vehicle capital projects and general fund budget extensions 21-22. And now we'll hear from Gina. I think she might be ready.
Figure that part out. Okay. Okay, I think I'm ready. No feedback? I'm on. My screen is shared. It can be seen. Perfect. Good evening. I am Gina Zutenhorst, Executive Director of Financial Services, and I am here to go through a presentation regarding budget extensions that we are proposing. And this is the public hearing component of that. So here's my presentation. These are held, required by law to be held. In advance of this, we have made notice in a public newspaper publishing that this is being brought to the board for 2 Sundays prior to this meeting. And after we have our public hearing and talk through these presentations later in the meeting, in the regular business part of things, there is an agenda items for board resolutions, which then the board would be asked to consider for adoption. So this part is just the public hearing part, and later in the regular meeting, we ask about taking action. So Form F-200 is OSPI's required reporting structure for requesting and filing a budget extension at the state level. This document is not very user-friendly, but it is also attached to the board plate for public review and for board review, the details within there. The board resolution, which we'll talk through later, is the legally required format for a budget extension at the local school board level. And it is about total budget appropriation. So it's about total expenditures. Budget extensions are about spending capacity. So for the budget extensions, we have 3 different funds that we'll be talking about today. And they are each their own separate legal set of accounts. So they require their own public hearing. So, but I have one presentation, so it's kind of combined. 3 funds: Transportation Vehicle Fund, Capital Projects Fund, and General Fund. So first, we will be talking about the Transportation Vehicle Fund. This one is the most simple out of all. The district is requesting an increase to Expenditure Authority from $750,000 as approved in the original budget to $1,450,000. I can't see the number there. Yes, an increase of $700,000. And this is really just to allow for full capacity to purchase buses for the 21-22 school year. And the Transportation Vehicle Fund has sufficient resources to provide for this spending. So before talking about the next thing, I'll take a small pause if in the event there are questions about the Transportation Vehicle Fund budget extension.
I was only going to ask about the bus that was damaged, and assuming that our risk pool, we got some funds for that.
Yes, we did. We did. And that's one of the examples that kind of pushes us into needing to make a budget extension, because we did not plan for one of our buses to have that happen to it. So now if we want to spend to replace it, even though we're getting the revenue from another place that pays for that, we didn't give ourselves capacity to spend it. So that's what the budget extension will do.
That's it. Thanks.
Thanks. So now moving into our capital projects fund, do we need to do anything with the way that we're moving through the agenda? I'm not sure. because this is its own public hearing as well. So
Do you want me to ask 3 times for comments for each one? For a total of 9 possible
I don't
public
know,
comments?
'cause
We
we've
can
done
do
it
that.
at the end as well. So maybe we'll just keep it at that. Sounds good. So now to talk about our capital projects fund. The district is requesting an increase to expenditure authority for 11 million or from 11,609,000 as was approved in the original budget to 16,743,000. This is an increase of 5,134,000. And this is to allow for plenty of capacity for capital projects to be completed during the 21-22 fiscal year, especially pushing out into the summer as we're completing projects according to our timelines there. So the capital projects does have sufficient resources to provide for this spending. And that's all I have on those 2.
Gina, I have a question for you.
Sure.
So for the capital projects, so just if you can clarify for me, so we made a budget of 11 million and now we're asking to up that budget to 16 million. Why? Why is there such a gap?
Yeah, it's a good question. The reason is that we budgeted to spend more than we did last year. So out of the available funds, we thought we would be farther in our spending than we are now to begin this 21-22 school year. So now budget capacity we had last year, we actually need it this year, just based on the resources that we have in the capital projects fund, because it is those non-voted bonds that we issued. So the funds are available. It's just how far do we get in each of our projects that we have that are going according to that capital levy, those plans, how far did they get last year? And now how far are they getting this year? So that's kind of, it's why. I don't know.
Okay, so we didn't get as far as we wanted. And so then we're into this year and we say we need to, now we have to do some more things. Just, I don't know.
think the projects themselves have changed. It's just the time frame that the accounting side thought that they would be sending out the funds.
Gotcha. Yeah, I could see that. That's the case with, I know myself with home projects that yes, thing is pushed to the future, if you will. So, and is that about the 5 million difference? Is that typical? Is that yeah, I don't know what we normally balance, like for what would be a lot for. Does this seem like it's an unusual request because of the supply chain and where money's at, or labor, materials, that kind of thing? I don't have a history with the board long enough to know if this is.
Yeah, well, I would really chalk it up to just pure timing, really, because the resources are already available. And yes, and I would like to invite Brian Lewis, Executive Director of Operations, to step in and share.
Thank you, Gina. I want to expand on Gina's point about timing. The big project is the construction of the addition to Arlington High School. And what we've experienced between last year and this year is the supply chain disruptions, labor availability disruption due to COVID. And that has pushed the timing of expenditures out of the last fiscal year into the current fiscal year. That's the primary cause for the increase in the budget request. There's not been any increase in the cost from what we had originally planned. In fact, we have lower costs for that project and for most of our other projects as well. But it's the timing of when we get the bills for the projects. We did not have sufficient budget capacity when we created the budget last year for this year's budget. We didn't know we were going to be experiencing the kind of delays that we have experienced. So that's the reason for the increase in budget authority that we're requesting.
Thank you. That's all I needed to understand. Thank you.
Do any other board members have any more questions about the capital projects or the previous transportation vehicle portion? Okay, Gina, will you tell us more?
Yes, thank you. I get to tell you more about general fund. So the district is requesting an increase of expenditure authority from $88,799,018 as approved in the original budget to $96,601,637. And that is an increase of $7,802,619. I just have to stop for a moment and say I'm really excited that I could say that all properly. To allow for spending of unanticipated revenues, that's one side of it, and for implementation of GASB 87, and I'll talk more about that, which is required for the 21-22 fiscal year. And again, the general fund has sufficient resources to provide for these increases. And I have much more detailed information for you for the general fund side of things, because that is our operating fund, and that is where all of the complexities in our world happen for us.
Gina,
So
quick
as I
question.
said- Oh,
Quick question, sorry. What's an unanticipated revenue? What
we are
that
going
just
to hear
sounds
all about what
mysterious.
those are and exactly what they are. So I'll get into that
Great,
soon
thank
with
you.
our slides. So as I said, the 7.8 million or so ish of an increase of budget appropriation authority. Two main reasons: implementation of GASB 87, that's Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement 87, and it's accounting for leases. And this is required. We're estimating at about $5 million for that. And then to allow for unanticipated revenues, and I'll talk more about that, is about 2.8 million. So those two factors is why we're coming to you for requesting increase to our budgets. So just talking about GASB 87 leases, these are required accounting entries only. They are not an actual disbursement of funds. So I just want to make sure board understands that. Entries will cause the district to exceed budget authority. They were not considered when we prepared the budget, and so we would need an extension in order to avoid exceeding that authority. And we're putting that as an estimate of $5 million. So what is changing and why? Here's a chart. It shows the original budget that was approved by the board in August of 2021 for the 21-22 school year. Shows our beginning fund balance, the revenues, the expenditures, transfers, and our ending fund balance. Then it shows the current year changes that are being wrapped into the budget extension, and it shows the revised budget column 21-22. So the changes are that the beginning fund balance has been adjusted to actual. So in our budget presentations that we've been sharing over the months, we've been talking about that increase, adjusting to actual. Revenues, we have adjusted by 7.4 million. Expenditures, we have adjusted by 7.8 million. And then you also see the ending fund balance that would be projected accordingly, 7.8 million. Here is more detail about the revenues. So I'll tell you what is included in each of those totals there. But the main things are that state general revenue category. We're increasing that 636,000. Our federal special, this column right here, is being increased by about 1.9 million. And this other category down here, that's where we're putting the leases piece. And again, those are accounting entries. The 5 million is accounting entries, not actual money coming in, not actual money going out. All right, so talking a little more about the general fund revenues, we have additional local food service, local revenues, a la carte money that we are collecting that we were not thinking or estimating for when we created our budget. We are providing meals for free, but the a la carte part, they do still have to pay for that. So those are bringing in funds. Our apportionment revenues are being increased because our enrollment is higher than what we anticipated in our initial budget, and that equates to about $636,000. So we are adjusting our revenues for that. On the other flip side of that, however, our state special education funds is coming in a little less than we budgeted it would based on enrollment there. based on what we budgeted for enrollment. So we have to want to reflect that decrease in revenue. And then here is our general fund revenues for the federal side, the unanticipated revenues especially. So that we've been talking about the Department of Health Return to Learn or Learn to Return grant. That is a federal grant. That's $490,000 that we were awarded that we were not anticipating having when we initially budgeted. And with that, we are having new costs that we are putting towards that. So we need to have that budget capacity to be able to fully expend that grant. Same with the USAC Emergency Connectivity Grant, $750,000 worth of technology purchases that we are able to make. And so we need the budget capacity to reflect that because that is new expenses that we would not have spent, and we have the revenues for that. So we need to wrap that into our budget extension. Our food services revenues and commodities, so the federal revenues that we're receiving from all of the meals that we're serving are higher than we budgeted. So we're adjusting for that. Our costs are higher there too, though. Our ARP, IDEA federal special ed dollars, that's another unanticipated revenue source that we are receiving. And then there are a number of other small increases to miscellaneous federal grants that we have that have perhaps a greater carryover from the previous year than we expected and things like that. So we're going ahead and making sure to acknowledge that in our adjusting our figures in this budget extension. So this is the revenue side. And again, you see the GASB 87 is on there for 5 million. And here is the expenditure side. There's that 5 million again under the other instructional programs. That is a placeholder only. And I'll talk more about these other categories. So for the other federal special purpose grant programs, we have the Learn to Return grant, we have the Emergency Connectivity grant, and then we have other miscellaneous federal special purpose grants where increased expenditures there, budgeting for increased expenditures there. Our special education programs, in our monthly budget reports that I've been talking about, that's been one of the categories where I've said on our challenges that we are spending more than we are receiving. More funds are being spent than are being generated by the funding allocation model. So we are taking this opportunity in our budget extension to increase that capacity in that special program. And same for the ARP IDE federal funds. Vocational education instruction, we're going to go ahead and increase their capacity for $100,000. Other instructional, there's that lease accounting, and then support services in the area of food and nutrition services. We're increasing expenditure capacity by 100,000, and then people transportation program increasing by 25,000. So that's the detailed makeup of what is in the F200 that goes to OSPI. But again, when we talk about later in this board meeting, when we propose resolutions for consideration of adoption, it's about total budget capacity expenditure in the expenditure side. So then next steps after our public hearing, like I've been mentioning, we will consider resolutions for adoption in the regular business part of our meeting. And pending board adoption of those budget extensions, then we send the forms off to OSPI for their filing and approval. Open for questions.
I have one question. Thank you for that lovely presentation and all the details. Can you explain what that lease accounting is, that it's new and different? And what do we have that needs a lease? And which things are we talking about here?
We're still figuring that out. So this is a very large undertaking for school districts across Washington State and across the nation, really, because it is generally accepted accounting principles, full GAAP accounting. So it is difficult to quantify. We're talking about present value We're talking about imputing interest. We're talking about deciphering what used to be just an annual payment for perhaps, let's say we're leasing a facility, a piece of property. We would just normally expense that annual amount for that year's lease. Now we have to figure out what the value of it was since the beginning and to the end, multiple years, and impute interest, because we don't calculate interest in there, and present value. So anybody who's interested in majoring in accounting, you get to have a new section in your textbook that's going to be titled this, and you're going to enjoy figuring it out, because it's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard for all of us school districts that are trying to calculate it all. So that's why I propose an estimate, and I don't have a huge list of the details yet, because we're still figuring it out.
But it could include things like the lease that we pay when we rent a facility, or when we collect money, when we lease an
Mhm.
area, or
Yes.
vehicles, or that sort of thing.
Yes, leasing vehicles is a good example. There is a materiality threshold that we would apply as well. So if it's a little itty bitty thing, like I want to say our postage meter machine is a very small amount that we pay every year. It's a lease. We don't own the machine, but it's a lease that's ongoing. That would be, we'd have to figure out if it even qualifies under the criteria. But even if it did qualify, it probably won't meet the materiality threshold. So we will not book that. It'll be the big stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, I think, thanks. So
Anything from our online board members? Okay, this is the part of the public meeting where I get to ask 3 times for any questions or comments from the audience members in person or on Zoom. So I'm going to ask, are there any comments or questions from the public? If you'd like to make a comment or ask a question, please approach the microphone. The comments at this point need to be related to these 3 topics: transportation vehicle, capital projects, and general fund budget extensions 21-22.
Thank you. Thank you.
Please state your name.
Melissa Eller.
And I think we have your contact information. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. I was just curious what the requirements of the grants were, the 2 grants, which were the return to learn to return, and the emergency connectivity grants.
Great questions. Gina, can you answer those ones?
okay, so for the Learn to Return, that is federal funds that is coming to us from the Snohomish Department of Health and administered through Snohomish County Department of Health for us. And it is intended to help with the efforts with COVID-19. So for example, extra time that nurses have spent in addressing the response efforts, that is going to be funded there. We hired additional health room assistants for our nurses in the buildings, at each of the buildings. And so those persons' salaries are being supported by the federal Learn to Return grant. Is that enough, or do we want more? There's a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Health that details what was requested, and our nurse, district nurse, was instrumental in assisting with that and being the liaison to the Department of Health in looking and requesting for that. The USAC Emergency Connectivity Grant is also federal funds, but this is our technology department is the expert speaker on this. They have, it is for purchasing Chromebooks and for purchasing, I can't remember what it's called, but it's their computer no, it's not for the hotspots. It's the teacher laptops, teacher machines. Sorry. it's all going for equipment, and it's all already predefined by the USAC. It's just that we get to have the equipment.
Thank you, Gina.
Yep.
I'm going to ask for the second time. Are there any public comments or questions regarding any one of the three topics, transportation vehicle, capital projects, or the general fund budget extensions? I'm going to ask for the third and final time, so don't be shy. Are there any comments or questions regarding the transportation vehicle, capital projects, and general fund budget extensions 21-22? Since there are no further questions, I declare the public hearing portion closed. The approval of the transportation vehicle, capital projects, and general fund budget extensions 21-22 are on the agenda tonight for board approval under new business. Thank you, Gina. Next up on the agenda is our consent agenda. We have the personnel report, payroll report, warrants, an overnight field trip for the AHS FBLA State Convention to Spokane, an overnight field trip for the AHS Girls Golf to Orondo, Washington, and an overnight field trip for the AHS Track and Field to Spokane. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Clerk, we are ready to take a vote now on the consent agenda.
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Kingman,
Aye.
President Levesque,
Aye.
Director Knapp.
Aye.
Thank you. Our consent agenda is now approved. Next up is our new business. And that's first thing up on our new business in our agenda is our academic and student well-being update for 21-22. I'm going to introduce Superintendent Sweeting again. Please share what you've got.
Good evening again. I'm going to be joined with during this time with Brian Lewis, Executive Director of Operations. But before he comes forward, we're just going to later today, I checked to see if the health department had put up the new numbers, but there weren't new numbers. So hopefully they're as low as this or lower. So that this is from last time we met. You can see this is from the district website from last Friday. It just has the totals, very low COVID positive, close contacts. The next slide is even better. There's no numbers. And I will tell you that the district nurse told me today that this is the first day in the last, I don't know, maybe 2 years that we have had no positives, 0 positives. So that's awesome. The new DOH revised guidance came out on the 8th, I believe it was, and these are some of the areas from the guidance that were still remain required. Employee vaccinations, and then if they do not want to get a vaccination, they can request an exemption, and then with the exemption, if approved, then they have accommodations. There is still the exclusion of people that have symptoms, that are not feeling well, that have symptoms of COVID. There is still isolation of people who have been tested positive with COVID. There is a requirement to notify groups of people, both students and staff with potential exposure. There is also a requirement to provide access to our families, to our staff with diagnostic testing if they choose. And we are required to report any cases or outbreaks. An outbreak is 3 or more in one particular location or near the location, like at a school. And then we are required to respond to these outbreaks. These are the requirements. There are still some questions and clarifications that we need on some of the guidance. And then there are some things that are still optional. And one of those things is on the next slide, is that facial coverings are optional, but we are again asking people to respect people's choices on this. There are some exceptions The exceptions would be that, well, the exception would be is personal choice, is that a person could choose to wear the mask if they would like to. Another is that, and this is where one of the places we need clarification. In part of the guidance, it says that if you have had COVID and after the 5th day, between the 6th and the 10th day, you can, and you have no symptoms and you return to your work site or school, they still, there's a question about this. It talks about that you're required to wear a facial covering. We're trying to make sure that that's actually true, because at one point it said strongly recommended, but we're trying to get clarification on that from the health department. And then the other could be for the staff who have accommodations for exemptions. The protocols, I mentioned here about we need to have an understanding about quarantine as well, because in the guidance, it says in the first part of it, it'll say one thing, and then you go a little bit deeper into the links and it doesn't quite connect. So we're making sure that we understand the requirements for quarantine. And the next is that we're going to continue the test to stay at parent choice. If they would like to have their child tested, it's their choice. And next, Brian Lewis, Executive Director of Operations, is going to share about the vaccine requirements and exemptions for volunteers.
Thank you, Dr. Sweeting. We were one of the first districts in the region to allow volunteers back into our school buildings. The guidance that we received from the Department of Health at the time was to treat volunteers in the same way that we would treat employees. So there was no disparity between the two sets of folks. This does not apply to visitors. I just want to make clear. It's never applied to visitors. Visitors are still allowed in the building to meet with their teacher or their child's teacher or to meet with a principal or to briefly observe in the classroom as well. But if someone's going to volunteer with one of our students, with one of our classrooms, then they have to follow the same protocols that employees do. Mr. DeYoung and I administer the volunteer end of the process as well, because volunteer clearance is part of the security portfolio that I manage, and that starts with a background check and application. Volunteers have to go through an application process where we check their background against the Washington State Patrol criminal database and the nationwide sex offender registry as well. That's the first hurdle they have to cross. The second one is if they've been vaccinated, then they can submit a vaccination card to us. If they have chosen not to be vaccinated or they haven't been vaccinated for another reason, then they can apply for an exemption, either medical or religious, through Mr. DeYoung. So if they've chosen not to be vaccinated or can't be, then they can still apply for an exemption. This was reinforced by the governor's, or excuse me, by OSPI during a statewide video conference last week. We'll continue to maintain this and this posture in terms of volunteer exemptions or accommodations until it's lifted, or until the employee accommodation is lifted or requirement is lifted as well.
Thank you, Ryan. The next slide is just questions, but I also wanted to mention that we are looking at in the guidance, it does not speak or address distancing requirements. So as we can, we are loosening those requirements as far as distancing, but people should use common sense, when it's just, we're not going to have a requirement on that. And for example, on Saturday, when we knew that this requirement was changing on Saturday, we actually, I believe, had a full house or close to a full house with our Shrek presentations, our performances, because we opened and we didn't have any restriction on the occupancy of the BPAC. So it was awesome. So that's all I have, unless the board has questions. Thank you.
I'm just wondering, when do we expect to hear more defined guidance?
Krissa Kramer, our district nurse, she was talking to the health department today, they actually are trying to get clarification from the Washington State Health Department. So it's Snohomish County that is trying to get clarification.
Are there any further questions from any board members or student advisor? All right, thank you, Dr. Sweeting. Next up on our agenda is our Hope Navigator project. And we're going to introduce Carrie Helgeson, our Director of Equity and Student Wellbeing. Carrie, please share with us the additional information you've brought to the board regarding the Hope Navigator project.
All right, good evening, directors. I'm back to present more information on the Hope Navigator project. Let me get it started here. All right, so I wanted to start with just saying what exactly it is. So it is a grant of $18,750 from OSPI to create a project. So the project has not been determined yet. That's part of our training that's taken place this school year. So it is training for this current school year plus follow-up training for next year to monitor the effectiveness of the project that we will be deciding on this year. It's time for the team of the 5 counselors and myself to learn and plan together what we can do in our schools with either all of our students or a select number of students around the science of hope. Money can be spent on supplies, materials, extra pay for additional time that's going to take to design the project, implementation planning, progress monitoring, and then monitoring of effectiveness of the project. So I want to talk a little bit about what Science of Hope is. So there's basically 3 guiding principles around the Science of Hope. But first I want to start with the definition of hope is that the belief that your future can be brighter and better than your past, and that you actually have a role in making it better. So the guiding principles are pretty 3 basic things. What it goes into these guiding principles though is a little more in depth. So first one is goals. Focus for your action. These can be short-term goals, but it can also be long-term goals. And then pathways, which are the steps to achieve that goal. And then what they call agency or willpower, which is the motivation to achieve your goal, but also the support group that surrounds you. I like that next part there that says hope is an important construct in children as research has linked it with overall physical, psychological, and social well-being. So I want to talk a little bit about an analogy that I think kind of encompasses what the science of hope is. So think of goals, pathways, and agency as a minivan. We can all imagine the journey to load everything in the minivan for your trip. The goal is the destination. There are numerous routes on how to get to your destination. Like any journey, your goal requires a map that can provide the detailed pathways of the many different roads that lead to your goal or your destination. Like life, some pathways lead directly to the goal, whereas others are perhaps more complicated. Sometimes people don't have a map to help them choose the correct pathway to their goals and get lost. So goals is one thing, but the steps to achieve that goal are different. Agency is the engine in the van you can use to navigate your pathways. Agency requires you to continuously stay tuned and replenish when you run low on fuel. We have to replenish the gas or agency so our van can continue on our journey toward our destination. On our journey, we also carry our daily burdens. These burdens can be the normal daily stress, but they can also be the attention-robbing force of trauma. They can also be the physical or mental health challenges. For those of us with high hope, we have learned strategies to keep the burdens in the back of the van so the distraction is limited. But for those with low hope, the burdens are likely sitting in the front seat trying to cause distractions along the way. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about why we need hope in our schools. So I pulled some statistics here. from the Healthy Youth Survey that was given to our students in the fall of 2008, which was pre-pandemic. You can see that only a little more than 50% of our high schoolers, mainly 10th and 12th graders, felt hopeful about the future. 57% of our current 8th graders feel hopeful about the future. And 33% of our current 10th graders and 41% of our current 12th graders have felt sad and hopeless every day over the past year to a point that they stopped doing some usual activities. And then looking at the COVID survey that was given the fall of 2020, I broke this down by our secondary schools. Feel hopeful about the future, 63% of our Howler students, 58% of Post, 27% of the students at Weston, and 61% of the students at Arlington High School. Felt sad, depressed most days during the past year. Howler 44, Post 49, Weston 71, and Arlington High School 58. So those statistics in itself tell us that our students need help with hope, the guiding principles, setting those goals, pathways, and providing the agency to think positively about their future. Hope can predict academic achievement from elementary school through graduate school. The higher the hope of a child, the higher the daily attendance rate, the lower the tardiness rate, the higher the grades, and the better the test scores. In high schools, hopeful children are more selective in the courses they choose, and they are intentionally choosing pathways to achieve their goal. So like I said, the training that we've done this year is to design the project. So this is not something we have created yet, but it is something that we need to do by the end of the school year because the money needs to be spent by September 30th of 2022. So some possible activities that we've tossed around. Hope Squad. We talked in Educational Week, they talked about a school in Ohio that trains secondary students to watch for mental health struggles among their classmates and guide them to professional help. Members of this squad, they call it, are trained to watch for signs of social isolations or feelings of hopelessness and in how to persuade students to get help. As educators and adults, we know that youth will listen to their peers, sometimes more than the adults in their lives. Another idea is relating that to a mentorship program. What can we do for summer school? Having kind of a mini hope camp. What could ongoing learning throughout the year look like? What can we do to train staffs at either throughout the school year or at our summer academy? Do we need a program or can we design something on our own? So those are all kind of questions that we're tossing around. And then the next part of that is who to focus on. We've talked about the transition years. You know, our current 5th grader is going to be going into middle school next year. Our current 8th grader is going into high school. That's big steps for them. And if they have low hope, what can we do for them in that elementary year and that middle school year before the following year to help them be more successful? Students that have low hope, attendance concerns, failing grades, that could be another focus group. Students that have been referred to community engagement board. And then some metrics, how we measure it is working, which is part of the training we'll have next year is how do we know? So the hope scale you see there on the right side, they use this in a lot of surveys now that are providing for our youth. They use this in the Healthy Youth Survey. They use this in the COVID survey. We've talked about using this as a survey for our 5th and 8th graders. It'd be pretty simple to give, 6 questions. And then you can see there that it gives the agency score, which is the motivation and willpower. It gives the pathways score. Do you know what steps to take to achieve goals? And then it would give you the total hope scale score there. So that kind of sums up a little bit of introduction to what the Science of Hope is, what are some possible project ideas, how we know it is working. So I'm open for questions.
This question just popped into my mind.
Okay, perfect.
So it will be counselors. I remember you saying that last time. I'm just wondering the involvement of student voice in the planning portion of it.
We do not have student voice in the planning of it. But it's something to think about for sure.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, Eric. I think that's pretty key. I mean, we're talking about assessing students, especially, I mean, they've had a survey, they've given some information that gives us some indicators. I think that should be a part of that process somehow. And then I don't know, if I would think too, possibly in the future, if you had something rolling with this, it would be great to maybe have have students who've gone through a program and have them in a mentorship role, something where they were available in the summer program or went back with the 8th graders going on to 9th grade. Then we have that freshman group that we have I forget what they called it, the high school at AHS, but integrated something like with that would be good. But like the freshman class, the cohort that would do this maybe initially, whatever that looks like, and then taking that information and maybe having those students be a part of, tweaking or making changes.
Absolutely. So that could be part of some of the long-term planning that happens.
Any further questions from any board members or student advisor?
I was just waiting to jump in. Thanks, Carrie. Great presentation. Do you think you could provide the board with the participation of the survey? I mean, those are some pretty disturbing numbers, and I'm just numbers guy. I'd like to know what kind of participation we got in that survey to kind of base a little bit more off of. Thanks.
The COVID youth survey and the healthy youth survey.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the two surveys that you quoted in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can share that data with you. It's almost every 6th grader, 8th grader, and 10th grader in our system.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I guess I'm good with that if you knew it
Yeah.
off the top of your head.
Yeah.
I didn't want to put you on the spot.
No, yeah,
Oh, great.
we
Thanks.
give it during the school day to those grade levels.
Director Kingman, do you have any further questions?
Carrie, I did have, excuse me, one last question. You mentioned, I think on one of your slides, something about Ohio, somebody maybe had an existing program. If someone's done this or is doing this actively now, do you have any information on the success rate or how it's changed the outlook of students, or what some results have been that have, that make you think this is a worthy grant to pursue?
I don't, but that's something that the team can look into. It's just something, as I was doing some research about what could some projects be about, that I noticed. But I think, anytime we can do anything with kids to hopefully get hope into them, it's going to have a payoff. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? All right, this is an action item. Do we have a motion to approve the Hope Navigator project?
Make a motion to approve the Hope Navigator project.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the Hope Navigator project. Madam Clerk, we're ready to take a vote.
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Kingman,
Aye.
President Levesque,
Aye.
Director Knapp.
Aye.
Thank you. The Hope Navigator project is now approved. Thank
Perfect.
you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate your support.
The next item on our agenda is our Resolution 2201, our Transportation Vehicle Fund Budget Extension 2021-22. And this will be presented by Gina Zutenhorst, our Executive Director of Financial Services. Good evening, Gina. Can you please explain the Resolution 2201 Transportation Vehicle Fund Budget Extension 2021-22?
Yes, indeed. So this is, as was presented earlier in the public hearing section of our meeting, this is the official budget resolution to increase spending capacity in the Transportation Vehicle Fund. And it is an increase of And I should have brought the printout. Does it say $700,000 up there? 750,000 is the initial, and it increases by 700,000. So I will entertain further questions, but without further ado, that I would just propose to the board what action they would like to take.
Any follow-up questions that have not yet been asked? I will entertain a motion to approve the Resolution 2201 Transportation Vehicle Fund Budget Extension 2021-22.
I can move that we approve Resolution 2201.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 2201 Transportation Vehicle Fund Budget Extension 21-22. Madam Clerk, we're ready to take a vote.
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Kingman,
Aye.
President Levesque,
Aye.
Director Knapp,
Aye.
Resolution 2201 is now approved. Next on the agenda is Resolution 2202 Capital Projects Fund Budget Extension 2021-22. Welcome back, Gina.
Thank you. And I brought a copy of the resolution so that I could make sure I say things properly. So yes, so now before you is Resolution 2202. And in reference to the presentation that was made during the open public meeting or the public hearing portion of our meeting. And this is the official resolution now to extend the budget for Capital Projects Fund by an increase of 5,134,000. And this is for capital project spending for the projects that we're carrying on and finishing up this summer.
Thank you, Gina. Do we have a motion to approve Resolution 2202 Capital Projects Fund Budget Extension?
I make a motion, we approve. I'm sorry. Not sure who's speaking.
Go ahead, Sherry. Did you make
Okay.
a motion?
Make a motion to approve Resolution 2202 Capital Projects Fund Budget Extension.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 2202 Capital Projects Fund Budget Extension. Madam Clerk, can we take a vote?
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Kingman,
Aye. Aye.
President Levesque,
Aye.
Director Knapp.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion is approved and the resolution is now approved. Our next up is also Gina to talk about Resolution 2203 General Fund Budget Extension.
So I thank you for the board's patience as we continue through these budget extensions with each of their official resolutions. So Resolution 2203, General Fund Budget Extension, and this is an increase of 7 million. I did not print this big enough for me to see.
802,619.
Thank you. So I will move forward with requesting for your action.
All right, we should be good at this by now. Do we have a motion to approve Resolution 2203, our General Fund Budget Extension?
I move we approve Resolution 2203.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 2203 General Fund Budget Extension. Madam Clerk, can you please call for the vote?
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Kingman,
Aye.
President Levesque,
Aye.
Director Knapp.
Aye.
Okay, Resolution 2203 is now approved. Gina, don't go very far. The next item is yours as well. We're going to have our 2022-2023 budget development briefing. And got to get more supplies. No hurry.
Thank you for your patience as we switch from piece to piece. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I do have a presentation for you today on this piece. So yes, it is my pleasure to begin a monthly update on the budget development briefing for future budget. So now becomes the special time where when you hear me talk, I'll be talking about this year's budget, and then I might also be talking about next year's budget. Sometimes I'll try to draw a line between the two, and then sometimes there's really going to be a blend. But this is the first one for this year because our legislature has now convened their session. And while they were not done at the time that I prepared this presentation, it's still time to help our board begin to be in the process with what we do with developing our budget and some of the legal timeframes involved. But first, anytime we're talking about our budgets, we want to talk about vision aligned budgeting, and that in accordance with our primary mission, which is to educate, prepare, and inspire students to graduate and seek their full potential as lifelong learners. So the budget does not happen in a vacuum by itself without considering these things. So I really like to make sure I'm always talking about them too when I'm coming to you. So strategic plan 3, goal 3, resource stewardship. We will secure quality resources, people, time, money, and property, and align these resources to support equitable learning and achievement for students by making decisions using an equity lens and data. So this is one of our strategic plan goals, but really it is supporting all the other 3 as well. There are 3 subsets within that goal. 3.1, allocate resources to maximize student learning while maintaining, improving, and replacing buildings and equipment, and also investing community resources prudently. This values that guide budget decisions is something that our board has worked on previously together, coming up with some of these values. These are in our board policies, and it's important to keep these in mind as we proceed along the path of making decisions. So I'm not going to read each of those, but I will pause momentarily for those that want to read the slide before I advance it. We'll be talking more about that. So a little bit about budget development timelines. I have a document that lays out the key timelines for budget development. It is attached to the board plate. There's a picture of it in this slide, kind of where we're at right now with board involvement and along with the legislative stuff. February 28, our board adopted enrollment, which is an estimate of what we're going to use as we build our revenue estimates going forward for the new year, the 22-23 year. We start having staff work sessions using those enrollment numbers, figuring out how many teachers we have and need for those numbers at the different grade levels, because we have them broken down by grade and by building. And as well, we're waiting for legislative session to end, which it did March 10, for any of the changes in laws that they might adopt or affect our budget funding negatively or positively. And then, so they have convened and we now know some of those main things, but they are still in the process of incorporating those changes into the tools that we're going to need to use for actually figuring out how much money they will provide, what their allocations will be. So they have a bunch of programming changes that they have to make on the software side to incorporate everything that the legislature did. But that's kind of where we're at right now, is in that little open period of, okay, so this is what they said and did, and this is what's passed. But we don't actually have enough that we can generate good numbers for board to look at and digest. So we'll be continuing to provide briefings in the next months. And the other 2 key dates that I believe we'll really need to focus on knowing right now is the July 10 budget draft. We will come to the board for the July 10 budget draft. We post that on our website, and then the board has a presentation February 11's board meeting. And then August 8 is a budget hearing, similar to what we just did right now with the extensions. We advertise 2 weeks ahead of time and make notice and post drafts up on our website. And then we have a budget hearing and then propose a resolution for adoption. And that would be the August 8 board meeting. And just quickly, here's a little bit about our annual budget cycle, because it doesn't ever seem like it ends. It's a constant cycle. So that's just a quick little introduction to the timeline that we are working with. And that's what the planning underway right now for staffing. Student needs and outcomes are paramount. We're doing analysis of our enrollment, like I mentioned, and class size needs, especially for grades K-3, because we have a smaller target that we are striving for with the K-3 for small class sizes. And then we will generate some cost calculation to determine what we can afford. This does take a long time with multiple people and departments involved in generating these numbers using our software, the financial software for the district. So legislative potentials, now that the legislature has convened, I had a question mark on enrollment stabilization before they finished up, but now we do know that they did approve some continued one-time support for this year for enrollment stabilization. For Arlington, that means we will be able to receive 1.9 million, and that will really assist us in our financial picture and the financial health of the district and being able to outward project, being able to afford what we have and add to as needed for the next 2-3 years. But the enrollment stabilization is one time, and it is a follow-up factor of the fact that schools, their enrollment dropped, hours dropped by over about 450 during the year that we were most severely impacted by the school closures. And many schools have not fully recovered those enrollment numbers, including ours. We are recovering, but it has not come back as quickly. And we still have staffed at the levels as if we had all of those students. But all would say that it's beneficial to have had the staff that we had, because we needed every single one of them in working with our students. So the enrollment stabilization actually helps us afford that staffing. So prototypical school model allocation formulas are enhanced to provide better support for funding nursing staff and counselors and other social, emotional, and behavior supports. So that has been approved, but they're phasing that in over 2 to 3 years. So it's not a next year, boom, here's additional funding. It'll be a little by little. And transportation funding model, that has not been completely solved, and I still have to reread the legislative action around that, so I don't have much to report on that for you for that. There has been a cost of living increase established by the legislature that we were waiting for, because it affects all of the contracts that we build for our staff, and it has been set at 5.5%. And that is frankly one of the largest percentages I have seen in my time doing this work. So that is going to present us with some challenges when we really crunch the numbers with those figures in there. Okay, I think I already said everything that was actually in this slide, but earlier. So just a reminder that regionalization decreases from 16%, which is this year, to 15% next year. Basically, that just means they are providing less state funds at a lesser rate than they did before. So we have ups and downs. And federal ESSER funds will be mostly exhausted as well as we go into next year. So I have more slides. I'm so sorry. No. The drafts will be brought to the board for review by the July 11 board meeting, as I mentioned before. Along that draft will include a 4-year budget and enrollment forecast, which is a required format. And that draft is required by law to be posted on our website by July 10. And the Northwest ESD staff, they review that as well. And then the budget will also, we'll probably make some changes, some adjustments as we're working with the data. And then it will come to the board for a public hearing August 8. And by law, the budget needs to be adopted no later than August 31st. So those are our big timelines. So that is all I have on our budget update, development update.
Thank you,
Any
Gina. This
questions?
is an informational item. Does any board member or student advisor have any questions for Gina? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item on our agenda is our approval of the Arlington High School tenant improvement contract. I'd like to introduce Brian Lewis, our Executive Director of Operations. What can you tell us about the Arlington High School tenant improvement contract?
Good evening again, directors. Brian Lewis, Executive Director of Operations. February 2020, Arlington School District voters approved a capital levy. Among the projects funded by the capital levy are the remodeling of classrooms in the C wing of Arlington High School. The project team consists of myself, construction manager Fred Owen of Owen Consulting, and McGranahan Architects. The project work is to convert the existing life skills suite at Arlington High School into a science classroom and a classroom, storage space, and office for the Air Force Junior ROTC program. The science classroom represents an additional science classroom for the school, and the ROTC classroom replaces the current classroom and storage areas housed in a portable building located on the Arlington High School campus. The district conducted a public bid process to receive bids on the project from qualified contractors on March 2nd, 2022. 4 bids were received. Regency Northwest Construction of Bellevue, Washington was determined the lowest responsive bidder at the conclusion of the bid process. And you can see there, the contract amount was $609,000. The architect's estimate for this project was $545,000. So we are seeing some pressure in terms of the marketplace responding to COVID issues, both in supply of materials and labor. So this is an excerpt from a drawing produced by McGranahan Architects. This represents Arlington High School, and the C wing is the area to the right. It's got the classroom addition shown, the new classroom addition shown on the end. The first floor of this new classroom addition, a large part of it is the new life skills suite. So when this area is ready and we'll be able to remodel the classrooms that currently occupy the life skills suite, which is shown in the blue and labeled as science and JROTC. We anticipate beginning work on this in July of 2022 and completing in August of 2022. This is a view from the exterior of the one of the current life skills classrooms, and you can see that there's a bit of an alcove created because the wall of the classroom is set back from the hallway. The intent of this project, if you look on this, the drawing on the bottom right-hand side of the screen, it shows the current life skills suite in its remodeled state. And just as an aside, it's referred to as a tenant improvement. That's what commercial construction or public construction, any kind of remodel work is called a tenant improvement. So it's not like we're renting this facility, but that's just the terminology that the industry uses to describe that kind of work. So you can see in the bottom right-hand side, that wall that forms the alcove now is being pushed out to create additional space. There's an image on the left-hand side that shows what the interior of the classroom will look like. And then on the top is the interior of the new JROTC classroom. And on the right-hand side, top right-hand side, is a drawing showing that classroom space, a pretty simple, straightforward, general classroom. But what's important for ROTC is the amount of storage that will be created in some existing spaces. There's 3 office spaces right now that'll be converted into storage for the equipment that the ROTC program uses fairly regularly. This is the current ROTC classroom. As you can see, it's a portable building. This is the transition to inside of the building will be great for the ROTC program. It'll help them feel more integrated into the whole school environment. It's also a more secure environment since it's inside of the building and not a building separated from the main building. Communications are much easier when they're inside of the school building, and being able to take a protective posture if they need to is also much more effective if they can do it inside of the school building and not in a portable building. So that's the extent of my presentation. I'm asking for your approval of the contract tonight. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah.
The original alcove kind of design feature, what was there a reason behind that that you're aware of? And
I am not. I don't know what it was intended for, other than to maybe create a little communal spot outside of the classroom for pull-out programs. That's usually why we would see something like this. You can see that it is set up like that, that there are chairs and tables set up outside. There's also a space for storing mobility type equipment as well. And that is not going to be, a similar concern in the new space because the spaces are so much bigger and there are specialized rooms for different sorts of services that special education students need. And
Great.
Right now, they're receiving them in some of them in these kinds of spaces like reading help, additional reading help, or math help.
okay, great. And then remind me too, I think we've already discussed at length, the portable building goes away. That's already in stuff we've talked about?
That's my intent. It's not guaranteed until it happens. The longer it sticks around unoccupied, the more creative uses are brought forward for it. I'll tell you, the building does need a lot of maintenance. And I'm not a fan of having, it would be unique in that it would be one of 2 separate buildings that we have. The other separated building is the CTE shop. It's a little more secure than a portable building is. Portable buildings are just terrible in terms of maintenance and utilities. This building has definitely served us well. And I'm going to propose that it go away, that we surplus it and maybe find another home for it somewhere else or outside of the district. It has also been extensively modified to suit the purposes of the ROTC program. So to make it suit another program would require more modification.
Good question. Thank you for that answer. Any further questions from any board members or student advisor? All right, this is an action item. Do we have a motion to approve the AHS tenant improvement contract?
I make a motion that we approve the AHS tenant improvement contract.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the AHS tenant improvement contract. Madam Clerk, can we please call for a vote?
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Kingman,
Aye.
President Levesque,
Aye.
Director Knapp.
Aye.
Thank you. Our Arlington High School tenant improvement contract is now approved. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Next up is on our agenda is our superintendent evaluation formal reminder and set date. Dr. Sweeting.
Yes, my contract requires that the board evaluate me annually by June 30th. And what you're seeing posted here is the timeline. We've been going through this process this year. We've had a mid-year conversation already, and so the evaluation's ongoing. But the final day, given that we have the June 30th requirement, would be, I am proposing the May 23rd, that we would have an executive session where we just discuss the final evaluation for this year, and then bring the contract for the next year on the board meeting in June.
Do any board members have any questions about the superintendent evaluation? Thank you, Dr. Sweeting. Next up is our first reading of Board Policy 1400, Meeting Conduct, Order of Business, and Quorum, and also our 3520 student fees, fines, and charges. Dr. Sweeting, will you please share us information about the revisions made to Board Policy 1400?
Yes. In the policy, there is a proposed change for the location. So currently, and we made this change previously to move the regular board meetings from the district office boardroom to the BPAC where we are now, to accommodate for making sure there's enough physical distancing due to the COVID-19 pandemic. As you know, there are no requirements for the physical distancing at this time. And so I'm proposing that we change the policy 1400 with the location for the regular board meetings back to the district office boardroom. So this is first reading, and then the second reading would be on March 28th, and then a decision. And then the first board meeting that I propose to be back in the district office would be the first, there's only one in April, so it'd be April 25th.
Do any board members have any comments?
I think it's a great idea.
I like it too. I was just wondering about, I think we talked about spacing, and then if there was an overflow in the boardroom, where would those folks go?
We'll set up some extra space in the Lincoln Room, which is upstairs from the boardroom. So we would have to ensure, though, that there's real time connection to the boardroom that's taking, or the board meeting that's taking place in the boardroom.
And this would, we would still stay on Zoom, and we would still have it recorded on YouTube. So that wouldn't change at all, right?
Right. And that's helped too with, people can come and join us on Zoom. They don't have to come, physically. And also Director Knapp was asking about the spacing. We will space the chairs inside the boardroom, with some space between them, not like we have, but not just right, right next to each other, just a little bit of spacing. But if we need any extra room, we use the Lincoln Room.
Thank you. Next, next policy to discuss is 3520, our student fees, fines, and charges. And that is our lovely Gina again, our Executive Director of Financial Services. Will you please explain the revisions to policy 3520?
My pleasure. I am here for the first reading of this policy, and very little change actually, but it is an important change. And this comes at the recommendation of our subscription that we use that helps us make sure that our policies and procedures stay up to speed with some of the legal changes that might be coming about, and law changes. And one of such law is around holding grades or transcripts if students have outstanding fines or fees. So that is no longer allowed. And so we want to make sure that our policy is in alignment with what the law says you can or cannot do. So that is what's reflected. It takes out the language around grades or transcripts being withheld. It changed the words from voluntary work to community service, and strikes the whole paragraph where it talks about a student transferring to another school district, and where it previously would have described what could be withheld, that is no longer. So that is what's here. Do we have any questions? Okay. And then we'll have a second reading next time.
I actually do.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
In the first paragraph where it talks about provide reasonable alternatives, would that be the superintendent who would determine what a reasonable alternative would be?
Let me read to where you're at.
Fourth line down,
In the second paragraph,
first paragraph,
first paragraph,
fourth line down,
fourth line
starts
down.
with provide reasonable alternatives.
Okay. The charge fee not cost us. Yes, the superintendent would provide, I'm trying to think of an example where that even comes around. Does not exceed the cost.
I guess my concern is that if a student or a family would, provide whatever that material would be and they think it's reasonable, but perhaps the school doesn't think it's reasonable, how do we determine that it is or isn't reasonable?
Well, I do think it'd be on an individual basis, depending on that. In the policy news, Gina, did they give any examples in there?
No, because that's not a change or anything different. I read that to mean you can purchase them or provide your own from home, because that's what they're talking about is, I don't know.
I'm very comfortable with getting back to us with maybe some examples or how that might affect the district and depending on what that material may or may not be.
Okay, I'll try to do that. Thanks.
And tag team with Dr. Sweeting, maybe.
Any other follow-up questions about that policy 3520? All right, thank you, Gina.
Thanks.
If the board will permit me, we need to go back a step and actually vote on our superintendent evaluation formal reminder and set date. So could we get a motion to approve that date?
I make a motion that we approve the May 23rd board. I think it was the May 23rd superintendent's evaluation.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to set the date of May 23rd for our formal reminder and date for our superintendent evaluation in the executive session of that board meeting. Can we get a vote now, please?
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Kingman,
Aye.
President Levesque,
Aye.
Director Knapp.
Aye.
Thank you. Next up, we're going to have our second reading and adoption of Board Policy 3411, Emergency Seizure Medication. And we would like to introduce Dave McKellar, our Director of Special Education and Health Services. Will you please share?
President, good evening.
Hot mic.
That's a great start.
We won't tease you at all about that.
Thank you. Gina, we'll talk after this. I think Gina set me up. Let's start this over again. President Levesque, good evening, directors. We are here for our second reading for policy 3411, formerly known as emergency seizure medication, now entitled accommodating students with seizure disorders or epilepsy. It was pretty straightforward. I think, Director Ray, you asked last time, everything was pretty much lined out and we just accepted the model policy from WASDA. However, after the presentation, Eagle Eye Brenda Dobry from Dr. Sweeting's office pointed out that on the under section F or H, I'm sorry, third paragraph and fourth paragraph down, asked us to insert the appropriate staff member's name in there. And so we changed it. What you should do they have the updated, Brenda? Okay, you have the updated now. We neglected to put in our district RN, and we made that generic district RN, not or nurse, not Krista Kramer or anything like that. So that's the only change from our last reading 2 weeks ago. And seeking for approval to the resolution is why we're here tonight.
Thank you. Do any board members have any questions before we vote? All right, this is up for the second reading and adoption. May I please have a motion to approve Board Policy 3411, emergency seizure medication?
I move we adopt Board Policy 3411, accommodating students with seizure disorders or epilepsy.
Second?
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve Board Policy 3411. Can we have a vote?
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Kingman,
Aye.
President Levesque,
Aye.
Director Knapp.
Aye.
Thank you. That policy is now adopted. Next up, we have our informational items, our superintendent's report. I'd like to introduce Dr. Sweeting again.
First, I wanted to say that I wanted to congratulate Tom Royce. He has been nominated as District 1 Athletic Director for this year and also as a nominee for the State Athletic Director. So we'll look forward to getting to see what happens there, but very proud of him. He has served us well for many years, and he's continued to really advocate for students, both on the court, in the field, and in the classroom. I just want to say again that Shrek was very successful, and I'm just proud of the students. I'm proud of the staff and the commitment that they make to bring such an amazing production into our town. It's just really something you'd see going down to downtown Seattle. It's amazing. So awesome. That we are working on the key calendar dates. We work with our labor groups about those, so we should be bringing those, if not at the end of this month, hopefully in April, so that our families and our staff, can plan. And we're actually hoping to bring not just maybe this next year, but the year after. Try to do it in a 2-year period of time, but we'll see if we're able to do that. So key dates. Look forward to them coming. And again, thank you for our awesome classified staff, educational supports professionals who are awesome in every way. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sweeting. Next, we'll hear from our legislative rep, Director Kelly, if you can give us our legislative update.
I would like to defer. I won't put Eric on the spot, but I was out a week or so back. And I know that Erica provided awesome notes. She attended the lunch meetings that they hold on Thursdays at noon. I'm in a classroom at that time, so I'm not able to attend them. But Erica gave me she said notes, but they were extremely thorough. But thank you, Erica, so much. And it's almost one of those opportunities that we need to sit down together and just kind of, and all that she listened to. Just again, our legislative session has ended. And as Gina also said, it's getting a matter of understanding what that will do for our budget. But at this moment, like I said, the one who's most up to speed on where we are with legislature would be Erica. I don't know if she want to add anything to this conversation. But like I said, I do very much appreciate that Director Knapp is able to attend those sessions, because if anything, it provides us information. So thank you, Erica.
Thank you, Director Kelly. Director Knapp, would you be willing to share a little bit?
Sure. It's been really great to attend those lunch meetings. Really just gives me an idea of what's going on around the state, and it's relatable with what we're experiencing here in Arlington. So with legislative session just ending, I think one of the priorities that we're all looking towards as districts and as boards is conferring together and considering the data and looking at our schools and figuring out what we want to support in the legislative session coming up for next year. And so I think it would be really great. I'm a new board member, and so I'm looking forward to some more support from some folks who've been here for a few years and providing new perspective also for how we want to move forward as a board and what we would like to support in legislature going forward. This last week was just a lot of talk about COVID and still like what Superintendent Sweeting was talking about. I'm still waiting for more guidance. So, yeah.
Thank you. Truly a team effort. Next, we're going to hear from our board members. Kyle, do you want to share something?
I think that all I really have to say is thank you to our classified staff. We really appreciate you. Congratulations to Mr. Royce. I know him as my first period teacher. I didn't know that pre-calculus could be made so lively. So congratulations again to him. And then also I was glad to see that our COVID numbers are so far down. It's just nice to hear that finally. So
Thank you. Director Kingman, would you like to share any words?
Oh, nothing to add tonight. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Director Ray?
Yeah, thanks again, classified staff. Great job for the last, well, forever really, but especially last couple of years. Appreciate that. And I too will say Shrek was a great performance. I hope everybody got to see it.
Director Knapp, do you have some additional words you'd like to share?
I would just like to say thank you to the classified staff as well. I really have felt support ever since my kids started school, 7 years ago here from classified staff. And I feel like they're carrying us through once again. And 2 of my 3 children saw Shrek and they loved it. So they were so excited to ride the bus and go see Shrek here. So it was really awesome.
Thank you. Director Kelly, do you have any other words you'd like to share?
I too appreciate classified staff. Now that I'm in a classroom, I am begging people to be in with me because I do realize just how essential just their presence and expertise really makes my day go much more smoothly. Also, just want to say my words as well that I do support a move back to the district office. I myself have never been as a school board director in that room, so that would be exciting. So I'm looking forward to a potential change of venue.
Thank you. And to complete the comments from the board members, I just want to say happy Pi Day. And also congratulations to Mr. Royce. I know he works extremely hard and it's wonderful that he's getting some recognition. And I want to say good luck at state. And then I also want to recognize that it's Women's History Month. It's National Music in Our Schools Month. It's Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month. And it's also Read Across America Month. And I just wanted to say thank you to the classified staff also, especially the ones that took time out of their day to come and present to the board tonight. We know that we would not have education in Arlington without all of their hard work. I want to say that I also attended Shrek and it was absolutely amazing. I got to sit in the very front row and catch confetti and so much joy. It was so wonderful to be part of such an incredible experience and see the students' remarkable skills and abilities and talents on full display. And their joy was absolutely amazing and very contagious. I want to say that I also attended my 8th graders band concert at Haller Middle School, where we got to hear from the high schools, all the different bands, and the 8th graders all played together. And it was just a remarkable experience, something that is just tremendously special and important to hear our children play music and learn and listen to each other and blend their voices and create a beautiful, harmonious, joyful noise. And I also attended the WASA Equity Cohort last week, and we talked a lot about what does equity look like in teaching and learning. And it was really a thought-provoking conversation. I'm looking forward to doing more work with that. And I also want to remind our board members that our PDC filing, our F1 financial affairs disclosure is due on April 15th. So mark your calendars. It's also my birthday, so don't forget. And tax day. It's a great day. Want to remind everybody that our next meeting will be a special board study session on Monday, March 21st, right here at the BPAC. And then our next regular board meeting will be held on Monday, March 28th, also at the BPAC at 6 p.m. If there's no further business before the board, can we have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Madam Clerk, can we take a vote, please?
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Kingman,
Aye.
President Levesque,
Aye.
Director Knapp.
Aye.
Thank you. This meeting is now adjourned. Everybody have a great night. Thanks for coming out.
Bye.